The warm evening breeze carried the smell of grilled fish and coconut from the beachfront restaurant as Rosa wiped down the wooden bar counter one more time. Her small hands moved quickly, cleaning every spot until it shined under the yellow lights. The clock on the wall showed 8:30, but her shift wouldn't end for another 3 hours. Rosa had been working at this popular tourist spot in Boracay for almost 2 years now. Every day felt the same. Wake up at 5 in the morning, catch the first boat to the main island, work until midnight, then take the last boat back to her tiny room she shared with 2 other girls. The money she made here was better than anything she could find back in her home village, but it still wasn't enough. At 28, Rosa carried worries that made her look older than her years. Her mother back in Manila had been sick for months now. The doctors said she needed surgery, but the cost was more than Rosa could make in a whole year. Her younger brother Carlos was smart, really smart. He had gotten into a good college to study engineering, but the family couldn't afford to keep him there. He was now working in a rice field, wasting his brilliant mind because they didn't have money for his education. Rosa sent almost every peso she earned back home. She kept just enough to pay for her small room and buy the cheapest food she could find. Rice and dried fish became her daily meals. Sometimes when the restaurant had leftover food, the cook would let her take some home. Those were the good days. The beachfront bar where Rosa worked was fancy by local standards. Rich tourists from all over the world came here to drink expensive cocktails while watching the sunset. The prices on the menu were more than what most local people made in a week, but the foreigners paid without thinking twice. Rosa had learned to speak English well by listening to the guests and practicing with her coworkers. She could also speak a little Japanese and Korean from serving so many Asian tourists. Tonight was busy like most Friday nights. Groups of tourists sat at wooden tables laughing loudly and taking photos of their colorful drinks. Rosa moved between the tables with practiced ease, carrying trays full of bottles and glasses. She had learned to balance 3 drinks in each hand and could walk across the sandy floor without spilling a drop. Her uniform was simple, a white shirt and black pants that she washed by hand every night. She always kept it clean and pressed even though it was getting worn out. Rosa believed that looking neat and professional was important, no matter what job you did. Her grandmother had taught her that when she was little. The guests tonight were the usual mix. Young couples on their honeymoon, families with teenage children who complained about everything, and groups of friends celebrating birthdays or holidays. Rosa had learned to read people quickly. She could tell who would be polite and who would be difficult just by watching how they walked in and looked around. In the corner of the restaurant, there was a man sitting alone at a small table. He looked to be in his 50s with gray hair and kind eyes. He wore simple clothes, just khaki pants and a blue shirt. Nothing fancy or expensive looking. He had ordered just 1 drink, a whiskey on ice, and was working on a laptop computer while sipping it slowly. Rosa had served him when he first arrived 2 hours ago. He was polite and said thank you in clear English. He didn't seem to be in a hurry like most tourists. When she brought his drink, he looked up from his computer and smiled. It was a real smile, not the fake ones she got from people who were just being nice because they wanted good service. What Rosa didn't know was that this quiet man had been coming to the restaurant for the past 3 months. He always sat at the same corner table, ordered the same drink, and watched everything that happened. He saw how Rosa treated every customer with respect, even the rude ones. He noticed how she helped the new waitresses learn their job. He watched her give her own dinner to a stray dog that came around the restaurant every night. The man had money, lots of it. But he dressed simply and drove an old car when he was on the island. He didn't want people to treat him differently because of his wealth. He wanted to see how they really were when they thought no one important was watching. Rosa didn't think much about the quiet man in the corner. She had bigger worries on her mind. Earlier that day, she had received a call from her brother. Their mother's condition was getting worse. The doctors said they couldn't wait much longer for the surgery. Carlos had been looking for extra work, but there wasn't much available in their small town. As Rosa cleaned glasses behind the bar, she did quick math in her head. Even if she worked extra shifts and saved every penny, it would take her 6 months to save enough for her mother's surgery. 6 months might be too long. She had been thinking about asking her boss for an advance on her salary, but she was scared he would say no. The restaurant was getting busier as the evening went on. A group of loud tourists had just walked in, already drunk from whatever bar they had been to before. Rosa could tell they were going to be trouble. They were laughing too loud and pushing each other around. The man at the front desk was having trouble finding them a table because they kept changing their minds about where they wanted to sit. Rosa finished cleaning the eye glasses and prepared herself for another long night. She had learned that no matter how tired she was or how worried she felt about her family, she had to keep smiling. The tips she earned could make the difference between her mother getting medicine or going without it for another week. She checked her appearance in the small mirror behind the bar. Her long black hair was pulled back neatly, and her white shirt was still clean despite working for hours. Rosa took a deep breath and walked back out to the dining area, ready to serve whoever needed help. The quiet man in the corner looked up from his laptop as she passed by his table. For just a moment, their eyes met. Rosa gave him a small smile and a nod before continuing to her next table. She had no idea that this simple moment would be the beginning of something that would change her entire life. As the night grew darker and the restaurant filled with more people, Rosa continued working with the same dedication she brought to every shift. She carried heavy trays, cleaned spilled drinks, and answered the same tourist questions she heard every day, all while thinking about her sick mother and her brother's wasted dreams. The man in the corner continued to watch and wait. He had been planning something for weeks now, and tonight felt like the right time to put his plan into action. But first, he wanted to see how Rosa would handle what was about to happen next. The group of 4 Australian tourists finally settled at a table near the beach view after making the hostess move them twice. Rosa could hear them from across the restaurant, their voices getting louder with each drink they had consumed before arriving. The man leading the group was tall with sunburned skin and wore an expensive watch that caught the light every time he moved his hands. Rosa grabbed her notepad and walked toward their table with her usual professional smile. She had dealt with drunk tourists before. The trick was to stay calm, be polite, and get their order as quickly as possible. Most of the time, difficult customers just wanted attention and would settle down once they got their drinks. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to our restaurant. Can I start you with some drinks tonight?" Rosa spoke clearly in English, making sure to pronounce each word properly. She had practiced her English for years, watching American movies and listening to English songs during her breaks. The leader of the group looked up at her with bloodshot eyes and immediately started laughing. "Did you guys hear that? Can you even understand what she's trying to say?" He turned to his friends who were already grinning and waiting for whatever show he was about to put on. Rosa felt her cheeks grow warm, but she kept her smile in place. "I'm sorry, sir. Would you like me to bring you our menu? We have many good options tonight." "Oh, she's sorry." The man slapped the table dramatically. "Listen, sweetheart. Maybe you should get someone who actually speaks English to serve us. This is embarrassing. We're paying good money to be here, and they send us someone who learned English from watching cartoons." His 3 friends burst into laughter. One of them, a shorter man with a beard, joined in. "Yeah, mate, this is supposed to be a nice place. What's next? Are they going to have the cleaning lady take our order too?" Rosa's hands tightened around her notepad, but she forced herself to stay professional. She had been through worse than this. Some tourists thought they could say anything to local workers because they were spending money. "I understand English very well, sir. Our menu has descriptions in English, and I can help you choose something you might enjoy." The leader leaned back in his chair and looked her up and down in a way that made Rosa uncomfortable. "Look at this, boys. She thinks she's educated, probably never been outside this little island in her whole life. These local girls are all the same. No education, no class, just here to serve drinks and look pretty." The third man, who had been quiet until now, decided to join the fun. "I bet she doesn't even know what half the drinks on the menu are. Do you even know what whiskey is, honey? Or should we order something simpler, like water?" Rosa's face burned with shame and anger, but she needed this job. She needed the tips. Her mother needed that surgery, and her brother needed to go back to school. She swallowed her pride and tried again. "I know all our drinks very well, sir. I've been working here for 2 years. Our whiskey selection is very good. We have local and imported options. 2 whole years." The leader clapped his hands mockingly. "Wow, that makes you an expert, doesn't it? I've been drinking whiskey longer than you've been alive, little girl. Don't try to teach me about alcohol." Other customers at nearby tables were starting to notice the commotion. Some looked uncomfortable and tried to ignore what was happening. Others watched with curiosity like they were watching a movie. Rosa wished the ground would open up and swallow her whole, but she had nowhere to run. The bearded man called out loudly enough for half the restaurant to hear. "This is what happens when you try to eat at local places, guys. The service is terrible. They hire anyone off the street. Probably doesn't even have a high school education." Rosa's vision blurred for a moment. She had graduated from college with a business degree. She spoke 3 languages. She had been the top student in her class before her father died, and she had to start working to support her family. But these men didn't care about any of that. To them, she was just another poor local girl who should be grateful for any job she could get. "I have a college degree, sir," Rosa said quietly, immediately regretting the words as soon as they left her mouth. The table erupted in laughter. "A college degree!" The leader was practically shouting now. "Oh, this is rich. Where did you go to college, sweetheart? The University of Coconut Picking? The Institute of Making Beds?" His friends were laughing so hard that other customers couldn't ignore them anymore. Rosa felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She would not cry in front of these men. She would not give them that satisfaction. The 4th man, who had been taking photos of the sunset, put down his phone and looked at Rosa with a cruel smile. "You know what, love? Even if you did go to some local college, it doesn't matter. You're still just a barmaid on a tourist island. This is probably the best job you'll ever have, so you should be thankful we're even talking to you." In the corner of the restaurant, the quiet man with the laptop had stopped typing. His fingers were frozen over the keyboard and his jaw was tight. He was watching the scene unfold with growing anger, but he wasn't the type to act without thinking. He wanted to see how far these men would go. Rosa tried one more time to maintain her professional demeanor. "Gentlemen, I just want to take your order so you can enjoy your evening. Our special tonight is grilled fish with coconut rice, and we have fresh fruit cocktails that are very popular with our guests." The leader stood up from his chair, swaying slightly from the alcohol. "Listen, I don't want to order anything from you. You're ruining our vacation experience just by standing here. Get your manager. Get someone who can actually do this job properly. And while you're at it, maybe learn some English. This is embarrassing for everyone." Rosa felt like she had been slapped. Her hands were shaking now, and she could feel the stares of everyone in the restaurant. Some customers looked sympathetic, but no one was speaking up. Everyone was just watching her humiliation like it was entertainment. "Your English is so bad I can barely understand you," the bearded man added. "How do they expect tourists to come here if this is the kind of service we get? It's like trying to order food from a child." The tears Rosa had been holding back finally started to fall. She quickly wiped them away, hoping no one would notice, but it was too late. The men at the table saw her crying and seemed to enjoy it even more. "Oh no, now she's crying," the leader announced to his friends. "Can't handle a little criticism. This is exactly what I'm talking about. No professionalism at all." Rosa turned away from the table, no longer trusting herself to speak. She had never felt so small and worthless in her entire life. All her education, all her hard work, all her dreams for her family, none of it mattered to these men. To them, she would always be just a poor local girl who should be grateful for whatever scraps they threw her way. What Rosa didn't see was the quiet man in the corner slowly closing his laptop and standing up from his table. His face was calm, but his eyes were filled with a cold anger that would have made the Australian tourists think twice about their behavior if they had bothered to notice him. Rosa stood frozen beside the table, her notepad trembling in her hands. The 4 Australian men were still laughing and making jokes about her tears. She wanted to run away, but her feet wouldn't move. This job was all she had. If she walked away now, she might never work in a nice restaurant again. The leader of the group was now standing and waving his hands around dramatically. "This is exactly why I told you guys we should have stayed at the resort restaurant. At least there they train their staff properly. This place is amateur hour." Other customers were trying to enjoy their meals, but the loud group was impossible to ignore. Some people looked annoyed. Others seemed embarrassed for Rosa, but everyone just kept eating and pretending nothing was happening. That's how it always was. Tourists could do whatever they wanted, and local workers just had to take it. Rosa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and tried to compose herself. She needed to find her manager and let him handle this situation. Maybe he could move the men to a different section where someone else could serve them. She started to turn away from the table when she heard a calm voice behind her. "Excuse me, gentlemen." Rosa turned around to see the quiet man from the corner table walking toward them. He moved slowly and deliberately, like someone who was used to being in charge. His simple clothes and calm manner made him seem harmless, but there was something in his eyes that made Rosa feel like the situation was about to change. The Australian leader barely glanced at him. "What do you want, mate? Can't you see we're having a conversation here?" The man smiled politely, but his voice remained firm. "I couldn't help but notice your conversation with this young lady. I've been watching, and I have to say your behavior is completely unacceptable." This made the Australians pay attention. The leader turned to face the man fully, sizing him up. "Oh, really? And who are you to tell us how to behave? Another local trying to protect his girlfriend?" The bearded man joined in. "Mind your own business, old man. We're paying customers here. We have every right to complain about bad service." The quiet man's smile never wavered, but Rosa could see his hands clench slightly at his sides. "Bad service? This young woman has been nothing but professional and polite. She tried to help you and you chose to insult her education, her English, and her character. That's not complaining about service, that's just being cruel." The third Australian, the one who had been taking photos, laughed. "Look at this guy thinking he's some kind of hero. What are you going to do about it, Grandpa? Write us a strongly worded letter?" Rosa watched this exchange with growing amazement. In 2 years of working at the restaurant, no customer had ever stood up for her against difficult tourists. Most people just minded their own business and let whatever happened happen. But this quiet man was willing to get involved even though he didn't know her at all. The leader of the group stepped closer to the man, trying to intimidate him with his height and youth. "Listen, whoever you are, this is none of your concern. We don't need some local telling us how to act. If you don't like it, you can leave." "Actually," the man said quietly, "I think you're the ones who will be leaving." This made all 4 Australians burst into laughter. "Oh, really?" the leader said. "And who's going to make us?" "You and what army?" The man reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Rosa couldn't hear what he was saying, but he spoke quietly for about 30 seconds, then hung up. The Australians were still laughing and making jokes about the crazy old man who thinks he's important. Within 2 minutes, 3 large security guards appeared at the entrance of the restaurant. They walked straight to the table where the confrontation was happening. The laughter from the Australian group stopped immediately. "Good evening, Mr. Chen," the head of security said to the quiet man. "You called for assistance?" Rosa felt her heart skip a beat. Mr. Chen? She had heard that name before. The restaurant staff sometimes whispered about the owner of their resort, but she had never seen him in person. Most employees thought he lived in another country and never visited the property. The leader of the Australian group was looking confused now. "Wait, who is this guy? Why are security guards calling him Mr. Chen?" The quiet man, Mr. Chen, turned to face the 4 tourists with the same calm expression he had maintained throughout the entire confrontation. "Gentlemen, allow me to introduce myself properly. I'm David Chen and I own this resort, this restaurant, and about 30 other properties around Asia." The color drained from the Australians' faces so quickly that Rosa thought one of them might faint. The leader's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no words came out. David continued speaking in the same calm, controlled voice. "I've been sitting in that corner for the past 3 hours watching how you've treated my staff and other guests. Your behavior tonight has been absolutely disgraceful." The bearded man found his voice first. "Sir, we didn't know. We were just having a little fun. We didn't mean anything serious by it." "A little fun?" David's voice remained calm, but Rosa could hear the steel underneath. "You called this young woman uneducated, mocked her English, and made her cry in front of a restaurant full of people. You think that's fun?" The photo-taking Australian stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. "Mr. Chen, sir, we sincerely apologize. We had too much to drink before we came here. We're willing to apologize to the waitress and order our dinner. This won't happen again." David shook his head. "No, it won't happen again because you won't be here. Your reservation for tonight is canceled. Your rooms at the resort are canceled, and you're banned from every property I own worldwide." Wait, the leader said, panic creeping into his voice. "You can't do that. We're paying customers. We have rights." "You had rights," David replied. "And you chose to use those rights to humiliate a hardworking young woman who was trying to do her job. Now you're dealing with the consequences." The head of security stepped forward. "Gentlemen, we need you to leave the property immediately." We've already packed your belongings from your rooms. They're waiting for you at the front desk. Rosa couldn't believe what she was witnessing. These men who had made her feel so small and worthless just minutes ago were now begging and pleading like children. The leader was trying to negotiate, offering to pay extra money to stay. The bearded man was claiming they were important business people who would give the resort bad reviews online. None of it mattered to David. He stood there calmly while security escorted the four men out of the restaurant. Other customers began clapping quietly, and Rosa realized that everyone had been hoping someone would stand up to the rude tourists. As the last of the Australian group disappeared through the front door, David turned to Rosa. She was still standing there in shock, holding her notepad and trying to process everything that had just happened. "Miss," David said gently, "I'm very sorry you had to go through that. Are you all right?" Rosa nodded, though she wasn't sure if she was all right or not. "Thank you, sir. You didn't have to do that for me." David smiled, the same genuine smile she had noticed when she first served him his drink. "Yes, I did. Could you please meet me at my table after your shift ends? I'd like to talk with you about something important." Rosa's mind raced with possibilities. Was she in trouble? Did the incident reflect badly on the restaurant? Was he going to fire her for causing a scene? "Don't worry," David said as if reading her thoughts. "You're not in any trouble. In fact, I think you're exactly the kind of person I've been looking for." The rest of Rosa's shift passed in a blur. She moved through her tasks automatically, taking orders, serving drinks, cleaning tables, but her mind kept replaying the events of the evening. Every few minutes, she would glance over at David Chen's corner table where he sat quietly working on his laptop, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Other staff members kept whispering to her throughout the night. Word had spread quickly about what had occurred. The kitchen staff, the other waitresses, even the manager had heard about the owner defending Rosa against the rude tourists. Some of her co-workers looked at her with new respect, others with curiosity, wondering why the mysterious owner had singled her out. Rosa's hands shook slightly as she served her last table of the night. She couldn't stop thinking about David's request to meet with him after her shift. In her 2 years at the restaurant, she had never heard of the owner having a personal conversation with any of the regular staff. Managers and supervisors, yes, but not waitresses like her. As closing time approached, Rosa's anxiety grew. She had convinced herself that despite David's reassuring words, she was somehow in trouble. Maybe the incident had embarrassed the restaurant. Maybe he blamed her for not handling the situation better. Rich people were unpredictable. They could be kind one moment and ruthless the next. At 11:45, Rosa finished wiping down her last table and hung up her apron. David was still sitting in his corner, but he had closed his laptop and was simply waiting. He caught her eye and gestured for her to join him. Rosa's legs felt weak as she walked across the empty restaurant. David stood up as she approached and pulled out a chair for her. This small gesture of respect surprised her. In her experience, wealthy customers rarely showed such courtesy to service staff. "Please, sit down," David said warmly. "Would you like something to drink? Coffee, tea, water?" Rosa perched nervously on the edge of the chair. "Water would be nice, thank you, sir." David signaled to the bartender, who quickly brought over 2 glasses of ice water. Rosa noticed that the bartender treated David with obvious respect, but also seemed comfortable around him, suggesting this wasn't his first visit to the restaurant. "First, I want to apologize again for what you experienced tonight," David began. "No one should have to endure that kind of treatment, especially not while doing their job." Rosa looked down at her hands. "It's not your fault, sir. Some tourists can be difficult. I should have handled it better." "No," David said firmly. "You handled it perfectly. You remained professional, polite, and dignified even when those men were being deliberately cruel. That shows real character." Rosa looked up at him in surprise. "You were watching for a long time?" David smiled. "I've been coming here regularly for about 3 months. I always sit at this same table, and I've been observing how the staff interacts with guests. It's something I do at all my properties. I like to see how things really work when people don't know the owner is watching." This revelation made Rosa's stomach flutter with nervousness. "Have I done something wrong?" "I try to do my best work always." "Wrong," David laughed gently. "Rosa, you've been exceptional. I've watched you serve difficult customers with patience, help train new staff members, and work extra shifts without complaint. You treat every guest with respect regardless of how they treat you. That's exactly the kind of employee any business would be lucky to have. Rosa felt tears forming in her eyes again, but this time they were tears of relief rather than humiliation. Thank you, sir. This job is very important to me. My family depends on the money I send home. David nodded knowingly. Yes, I know about your mother's medical situation and your brother's interrupted education. I've done some research. Rosa's eyes widened in alarm. Research? About me? Don't worry, David said quickly, seeing her concerned expression. Nothing invasive or inappropriate. But when I notice an exceptional employee, I like to understand their situation. I know you graduated with a business degree from the University of the Philippines. I know you've been supporting your family since your father passed away. And I know you're working here because you need money, not because you lack ambition or intelligence. Rosa was stunned that this powerful man knew so much about her background. I don't understand why you would research me, sir. David leaned forward slightly. Because I've been looking for someone exactly like you for a very important position in my company. Your company? Rosa's voice was barely a whisper. Rosa, I don't just own this resort. I'm the CEO of Chen Hospitality Group. We operate luxury hotels and resorts in 15 countries across Asia, Australia, and the Pacific. We're expanding rapidly, and I need someone to help develop and implement training programs for our staff worldwide. Rosa's mind struggled to process this information. She had heard of Chen Hospitality Group. They were one of the biggest names in luxury tourism. Their properties were featured in travel magazines and hosted celebrities and world leaders. I still don't understand what this has to do with me, Rosa said. David smiled. I need someone to create and oversee a comprehensive customer service training program. Someone who understands hospitality from the ground up. Someone who knows what it's like to serve difficult customers and still maintain professionalism. Someone who can teach others about dignity, respect, and genuine service. Rosa shook her head in confusion. But sir, I'm just a waitress. I don't have experience with training programs or managing people. You have something more valuable than experience, David replied. You have character. You have the natural instincts for great service that can't be taught in business school. Tonight proved that you can handle pressure with grace and maintain your dignity, even when others try to take it away from you. David paused to take a sip of water, then continued. Rosa, I'm offering you a position as regional training director for Chen Hospitality Group. You would be based in Singapore and responsible for developing service standards and training protocols for all our properties. Rosa felt dizzy. Singapore was one of the most expensive cities in the world. She had seen it in movies and magazines, but never imagined she would ever visit, let alone live there. The salary would be $8,000 per month to start. With performance bonuses and full benefits, David continued. The company would also provide housing assistance and cover all relocation expenses. Rosa's water glass slipped from her hand and clattered on the table. $8,000 per month was more than she currently made in 2 years. It was more money than her entire extended family had ever seen at one time. Sir, I think there's been a mistake, Rosa said, her voice shaking. I can't possibly be qualified for such an important position.